Hello and welcome to this painting video. We've had a few requests on how to do injuries such as scars and bruises on our models. So in this video, we're going to show you a couple of examples of doing scars and an example of doing bruising. Now the model we're going to be using are going to be some Ogre Beast Riders upon a Thunder Tusk. They're just nice large models with lots of skin areas to show these effects. So the first type of scar we're going to do, we're going to be using Flesh Terra's Red for this. So I'm going to be using a small layer brush as well, just to get a nice fine point. So what I'm going to do is just apply a little bit to the palette. This isn't to thin it down. This is just so I get a nice point to the brush and not to overload it too much with too much contrast. So once I'm ready, we're then ready to start applying it to our model. So I'm going to do the first guy here. So what I'm going to be doing here is just applying a couple of little strokes like so. Just get a bit more accuracy there and just flip that down. You can do them in different directions if you want to. You can do as many or as little as you want as well. You just imagine he's just been brawling and fighting against other ogres or other enemies. There we are, with the Flesh Terra's Red now dry, our first example of scars are now done. You'll also notice I've done a couple of groupings of 3 as well, so it just represents like it's been scratched by a beast. So what I'm going to do now is move on to our next example of scars. We're going to go for a bit more of an age scar here, so we're going to be using Gaelvorbak Red. It's got a nice burgundy tone to it. So what I'm going to do is just get a couple of paintbrushes of Gaelvorbak Red, like so, and then 1 paintbrush of water. That should be enough to thin it down. And I'm just going to make sure I get my brush to a nice point like so. And then we're ready to do our next example of scars. So I'm going to do this on the fellow at the back there and almost follow the same procedure that we did on the first one. Just a couple of little nicks and cuts. Again, you can do groups of 3 again if you want to represent he's been scratched by a beast as well. There we are, with the second set of scars now done. What we're going to do now is just add a little bit of depth to some of those scars, just so it looks like it's an older, deeper cut. Now for this we'll be using dried bark. We'll thin it down ever so slightly with a little bit of water as well. So I'm just going to grab my small layer brush again, just apply a little bit to the palette and then a little bit of water. As it's a bit darker, it will really help add a bit of punch to those scars as well. So I'm just going to get a nice point to the brush. We'll start on the first example. So we've got a large cut just on his pecs here. So all I'm going to do is just do a little dot on that bit there and then just draw a line down. Again, that'll just add a little bit of depth to it. Here and there. Don't have to go too mad. You can do either side of the cut or you can do inside it as well. So you've got a bit of red either side. And then we're just going to go to the top example here. And do the same thing. With that brownness as well, what it will do is as blood dries, it goes a bit brown as well. So it kind of gives it a bit of an aged feel. There we are, with the dried bark now dry, you can see it's added a little bit more depth to those scars. With our scars at the back there, they're looking a little bit more aged, where the ones at the front feel a little bit more fresher. With that, our scars are done. So what we're going to do now is move on to our next injury, which is to do bruising. Now we're going to start with Plague Bearer Flesh. This is to add that horrible greeny yellowy tone that you get around bruises. Then to build up that colour, we'll use some Magos Purple. Then to add a little bit more punch, we'll use a little bit of Volupus Pink. And then finally, we'll drop in a little bit of Drutchy Violet just to add a bit more deepness to some of that bruising. But first of all, let's start with Plague Bearer Flesh. So what I'm going to do is just apply a little bit to the palette like so. Again, I'm not thinning this down. This is just so I can load up the brush and get a nice point. And then we're going to do some bruising on this poor Ogre's face here. So I'm going to do it on his left-hand side. So the yellowy area, so using this Plague Bearer Flesh, is actually going to be slightly larger than the rest because it's going to be the surround. Also do a bit on his nose as well. There we are, with the Plague Bearer Flesh now dry. What we're going to now do is start building up that bruising by using Magos Purple. So what I'm going to start doing is start applying that more centrally. So we've got a lot of that Plague Bearer Flesh surrounding it. Now the other thing to do here, normally you want to leave the edges so they're a nice highlight. However, when doing bruising, you kind of obscure that a little bit so it looks swollen. So I'm going to add a bit more depth and colour to actually where the edges are. So it just gives that distorted impression it's swollen up. And in some places you can just do little dots extra of bruising as well, just so it looks like it's spread. Right, to add a bit more depth to this bruising, what we're going to now do is get some Volupus Pink and then just start sparingly adding that in dots like so around. This will obviously add a bit more redness to it and also make it feel a little bit more deeper as a bruise as well. Now that the Volupus Pink is dry, what we're going to do now is use Drutchy Violet just to bring some of that redness into more of a purple spectrum. Again, I'm going to coat it over some of those deeper areas. And also what I want to do is the eyelid just under here. So I'm just going to do that as well as like a nice little tone. So some of that bruising is starting to spread around elsewhere as well. There we are with the Drudgy Violet now dry. You can see it's had a little bit more soreness and depth to those bruises. And with that, our scars and bruises video is now done. Now remember, these are just a couple of examples of doing scars and bruises. Just by swapping out some of the reds for like darker tones or lighter tones for the scars, you can get some different effects. And same for the bruising as well. You can just change some of the hues of the pinks as well for some either deeper bruises or more shallow ones. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed painting your own scars and bruises, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.